Hello, and welcome back to DevOps Quick Bites, your regular dose of Salesforce DevOps goodness. In the last few episodes, I've talked about observability and monitoring flow errors. Today, we're going to take a step further and look at Apex exception monitoring, why it matters, how to set it up, and how to get real value out of it from your day-to-day work. So if that sounds good to you, stick around. Apex is the backbone of a lot of custom Salesforce functionality. Triggers, asynchronous jobs, integrations, you name it. When Apex fails, however, the impact can be anything from a minor inconvenience to a major business outage. The trouble is, unless you're actively monitoring those exceptions, they often stay hidden until a user complains. By then, the damage is already done. To combat this, you should build out your defenses with proactive exception monitoring. It lets you spot issues before they snowball, giving you visibility into what's breaking, where, and why. This isn't about pointing fingers, it's about shortening the time between something going wrong and getting it fixed, which ultimately keeps your users and customers happy. Let's take an example. Imagine you've got an integration with an external payment service. A small schema change on their side suddenly means that your Apex callouts start failing with an unhandled JSON parsing error. Without monitoring in place, you'd only find this out when finance starts wondering why no payments have been processed for 2 days. With exception monitoring, you'd see that spike in errors within minutes, with all the detail that you need to pinpoint the failing method and start working on a fix straight away. Salesforce gives us some native tools: debug logs, Apex exception email notifications, and event monitoring. But they've got some limitations. Debug logs are only generated if logging is enabled for a user. Emails can easily get ignored or filtered, and even event monitoring requires extra licensing. None of these gives you a clean, centralized view across your orgs, environments, or historical trends. And that makes it hard to connect the dots and see what that big picture really is. Gearset's error monitoring takes a more holistic approach. It can hook into your orgs and automatically surface those Apex exceptions alongside the flow errors. And that means that you're not just looking at point-in-time incidents, you're seeing trends over time, grouped by class, trigger, or even deployment. You can get context-rich details, stack traces, timestamps, impacted users, etc., all without having to hunt through those debug logs. And because it's tied into Gearset's wider observability tools, you can correlate exceptions with recent deployments or metadata changes and see where they potentially could have come from. If your latest release suddenly coincides with a spike in Apex errors, you'll know and can roll back and patch with confidence. Setting it up is pretty straightforward in Gearset. You connect your Salesforce org, enable error monitoring, and select which error types to track, including Apex exceptions. From there, Gearset starts collecting and storing those error events so that you can search, filter, and group them however you need. You can even hook it into Slack, Microsoft Teams, or ticketing tools such as Jira or ADO work items, so that the right people are going to get notified the moment something goes wrong. Once you've got that data, interpretation is key. Look for recurring exceptions. The same error message happening multiple times a week might be impacting more users than you realise. Identify seasonal or deployment-related spikes. Maybe a big data load is triggering governor limit errors that you can address in code. And watch for exceptions with no recent activity until suddenly they explode. That can be an early warning of a dependency changing elsewhere in your architecture. Here's how I'd recommend approaching Apex exception monitoring in your DevOps process. First, make it continuous. Monitoring shouldn't just happen after big releases. Code can fail because of data changes, integrations, or even seasonal load spikes. Second, tag and group errors by type, class, or business process. And that way you can prioritize the most business-critical failures and not get lost in the noise. Third, integrate monitoring with your workflows, whether that's pushing alerts into Slack or Teams, logging tickets automatically in Jira, or including exception dashboards into your sprint reviews. And finally, close that loop. Use the insights to fix not just the symptoms, but the root cause. If a pattern of null pointer exceptions keeps cropping up, that's your cue to add more robust null checks, defensive coding, or better test coverage. And remember, this isn't a standalone activity. Apex exception monitoring works best as part of a wider observability strategy. So pair it up with your flow error monitoring, metadata change tracking, and performance metrics, and you'll soon build a rich, real-time picture of your Salesforce health. That's really when you move from reacting to incidents to actively preventing them. Apex exception monitoring isn't just a nice to have. It's a vital part of making Salesforce more reliable, predictable, and resilient. With tools like Gearset's observability suite, you can move from reactive firefighting to proactive problem solving and keep your org running smoothly. After all, why spend all that time and money putting quality gates in place for a more reliable release process if you're flying blind when it comes to the actual errors that slip into production? If you haven't seen my earlier videos on observability and flow error monitoring, check those out for more context. And don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss future episodes. And if you've got questions, drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear how you're tackling exception monitoring for your org. In the meantime, stay error-free, well monitored, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye for now.